Very attracted to the huge body of water behind us, Lake Michigan, that body of fresh water. We'll get a little glimpse of it at the end of the tour tonight. But the river just didn't seem like much. It was the Native American people who, of course, lived here for hundreds and hundreds of years before anybody else showed up. They said, no, the river's actually real important to our travel and our trade. And if you get in a boat and point it westward, or the way we're pointed right now, you'll eventually hook up with a couple other rivers that's now in what we call the state of Illinois, the Des Plaines River, the Illinois River. And with just one little piece where you have to port your boat, maybe get out of your boat and carry it across a strip of land, you could eventually make it to the Mississippi River from the point we're sitting at right tonight. So those explorers knew that this particular piece of land was going to be very important someday. And they were right. By the end of the 1800s, Chicago was the fastest growing city in the world. And it all started right here on the Chicago River. Now, somebody who knew the value of the river early on was our first non-native settler, a man named Jean-Baptiste Pointe-du-Sable. He lived where the river met the lake, and back then, in the mid-1700s, that was in this piece of land off the right-hand side of the boat. See the steel and glass building that says Fidelity near the base? There's a big open-air plaza behind that to the left of that word, Fidelity. We call it Pioneer Court today, but that's where Mr. DuSable set up first a fur trading post, and later he built a big estate for he and his family right there, because the banks of Lake Michigan actually used to come up to where we're sitting right now. So he knew location was key. That's where he set up his business and later his home. He was helped, no doubt, his success was, he was made more successful by his choice of a wife. Her name was Kitty Hawa. She was a Potawatomi woman, a Native American woman, spoke several different languages, and really helped vouch for him to anybody who was coming through Chicago at that time. So European explorers and other Native American people, and they really built a very successful life right there on the banks of the Chicago River. That piece of land where they set up their estate is a great place to start the tour, because right around that piece of land you can see about 100 years of architecture and 3 distinct styles of architecture. So let's start with that first building, that gleaming white building with the clock tower up ahead onto the right side of the boat. That's the Wrigley Building. It's from 1921. Graham Anderson, Probst, and White are the architects. It's an example of Spanish Renaissance Revival style. It's got a lot of beautiful ornamentation coming off of that building and etched into the 5 different shades of terracotta that clad the facades we're looking at right there. The clock tower is actually meant to look like a clock tower that you could see if you were lucky enough to visit Sevilla, Spain. There's a tower over there called La Givalda. Looks a lot like that one. That's where the Wrigley Corporation has their headquarters for many years. So 1921. Now I'll go back to the building that says Fidelity at the base there, that steel and glass building. It's from 1965. Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill are the architects. It's a perfect example of a modernist style building. The modernist era was basically post-World War II, 1945, maybe up until the 1970s. Modernist buildings are easy to pick out. They always have a flat roof. They're one geometric shape all the way around. That one happens to be a rectangle. They have rows and rows of identically shaped and spaced windows, and they have no external ornamentation. So compare and contrast that with the Wrigley. Let me get my mic working. So then we have 1965. Now bring your eye down to almost the river's edge. You see that glass wall building? It's just to the right of that little clump of trees over there, pretty close to the river's edge. That's Apple Michigan Avenue. It's the Apple store. It's from 2017. Foster & Partners are the architects, the same architectural firm that built Apple's headquarters out in Cupertino, California. Look at the rounded edges on the roof of that building. It might look a lot like the Apple product you might have in your hand tonight. You might be taking pictures of. And it looks like you can just tilt that roof open up, almost like a laptop that you have back at home on your desk there. And you can see right through that building up into the plaza. And from inside of the building, you have beautiful views of the city and the river itself. So it really embraces its situation on the river. So right there, we haven't barely even started. You've already seen about 100 years of architecture, 1921, 1965, and 2017. And here we go on our cruise here. You'll notice that the older buildings tend to be up and away from the river, and the newer buildings, everybody wants to be close to the river now. The Chicago River in its earliest days was a working river. It was very chaotic and noisy and very, very smelly. I'll get into that later. But it's living its best life right now, so that's why you see a lot of activity very close to the
Worst
river's edge.
smelling shit on the planet.
We'll be going under a ton of bridges tonight. Please resist the urge to reach up and try to touch them. You will definitely regret that move. I'll tell you about the bridges a little bit later. The first one we're going to go under is called the DuSable Bridge. It carries Michigan Avenue across the Chicago River. It was completed in 1920. Edward Bennett was the architect. When we completed this particular bridge in 1920, it kind of sent a signal that we were going to start developing off north of the river, or off to the right-hand side of the boat. Before that, we had really just concentrated all our development over on the left-hand side of the boat. Speaking of the left-hand side of the boat, I'll concentrate on that side for the first portion of our tour here, so you don't feel like you're watching a tennis game and have to go back and forth. Ooh, see how close we are to that bridge? Don't do it. Don't do it. Our river's pretty high today, too, because of all the rain we had. Look at this building off to the left. It's directly up and to the left. This is London House, Chicago, 1923. Alfred L. Schuler is the architect. It's a great example of the Beaux-Arts style of architecture. Look at the open-air temple up on top, that row of columns underneath it, and that gentle bend in the facade of the wall facing us. Beaux-Arts style, it means beautiful art in French. So I always picture a woman getting dressed up for the opera or something. She'll have like a big hat coming off of her body, maybe a big skirt. Beaux-Arts style architecture is always kind of leaping off of the facade of the building. Highly ornamental. Up ahead on the left-hand side still, look at the sandy-colored building. It's got a center tower and another temple on top of it. And then a little bit lower along the roof line, you see 4 smaller open-air temples. Those actually used to be water tanks. They were a safety feature for that building. That building's called by its address, like a lot of our buildings are. That's 35 East Wacker. It was completed in 1926 by Yaver and Dinkelberg, but we all call it the Jewelers Building. The earliest developer or owner of that building was really trying to attract a certain type of client to rent the office space in his building. He wanted people who sold watches and jewels and jewelry to be his tenants. And so he built a feature to that he thought would really attract them. He built an elevator, bigger than normal elevator, big enough to drive a small truck right into. So he figured if you're dealing in all this valuable things, you don't want to be out on the street for too long with it. You want to be in the safety of your car. So you could drive your car straight from the street into that elevator and be delivered up to your floor nice and safe. Didn't work. None of those people took him up on it, and so he later had to fill in the extra space the big elevator was taking up so he could rent out more office space. But that nickname, the Jewelers Building, really stuck. So the modernist style of building that I showed you at the very beginning of the tour, the modernists had a tagline associated with them of less is more. They really thought that only the technology of the building is the thing that should be celebrated. You didn't need to add other things onto the exterior of your building to have it be successful. Well, just like what, the style of clothes or music that your parents might like, the next generation kind of has to trash it a little bit. Kind of the same in architects during this period. So the movement that came after the modernists was the postmodernist, and they wanted to bring more life back to their facades. Look off to the left-hand side, see this checkerboard pattern building with the silver vertical bars in every single window? That's an example of a postmodern building. So instead of being one regular geometric shape all the way around it, it's kind of got texture to its facade. It's got shoulders coming out of the building, and it's got a lot of sort of external ornamentation with those silver bars and other columns and things on the facade of that building. Good example of postmodernism. That particular building was completed in 1989. It's called the Leo Burnett Building. It's home to a very successful advertising agency. So still on the left-hand side of the boat, look up on the roof line of all these buildings and find the one that has triangles at the very top up there. It also says Sargent and Lundy under there now. This is 77 West Wacker, another example of postmodern. Those triangles at the top are meant to reference pediments that you might see in a Greek temple. Postmodernists like to make a reference to past styles of architecture. And then it looks like it's got a stencil wrapped around a glass building. The white lines, part of the stencil feature, are meant to look like columns. So it's a little mix of old style and new, a great example of postmodern. That building was completed in 1992. Ricardo Bofill is the architect. So look over to the left, you'll see this steps along the Riverwalk with some trees planted in there. And now look for the sandy colored building. It's got the US flag flying near the base there, and it's in the shape of kind of a high-backed throne or a chair. This is the LaSalle Wacker building. It's from 1930. Halbert and Root are the architects. In the 1920s, early 1920s in Chicago, they passed an ordinance in the city that said if your building is going to be higher than 264 feet or about 80 meters, you had to step it back from the sidewalk like that. You had to kind of create those indentations in the building, kind of let natural light get into the interior of the building a little more easily, and let air circulate around the building instead of being all stagnant for the pedestrians down below. So a lot of the buildings in the 20s and 30s take the shape of that high back chair or throne. So you'll see people off the left-hand side of the boat. They're walking along almost right on top of the river here. They're walking on the river walk. It's about a 1.1 mile continuous walkway. It goes from our Lake Street all the way out to Lake Michigan. It was completed between 2014 and 2016. Ross Barney Architects are the architects responsible for the Riverwalk. They're led by a woman named Carol Ross Barney. She's a Chicagoan, and she has won the highest award you can win in American architecture. She won the 2023 Gold Award from the American Institute of Architects. Everything about the Riverwalk, the architecture, the landscape architecture, and the project manager from the city of Chicago were all women. It's a women-led project.
That's a lot prettier.
In this particular section of the Riverwalk we're floating through right now, it's got these floating gardens on the river's surface. This particular room, we call each section of the Riverwalk in between the bridges rooms because they each have a distinct style. Every time you hit a bridge, the style of the Riverwalk changes. This one has floating gardens, and underneath those gardens there's these structures that are called, I kid you not, they're called fish hotels, and they're little structures so fish can get in there and take a rest and hopefully lay eggs so that baby fish can come into the river. The river's a lot nicer, friendlier place for fish now, so we're trying to encourage them to, reproduce. So still on the left-hand side, once we clear this bridge, look to your left, you'll see a green glass building. It's got a beautiful, gentle curve in it. The sun is hitting it perfectly right now. This is a big favorite among Chicagoans. This is 333 West Wacker. It's from 1983. KPF are the architects. It's a great example of contextualism in architecture. The architect really took into account the site where his building was going to be, and it was going to be right where the river splits into the south and the north branch. So there's a curve in it, so he made his building kind of match that. Used two different shades of green glass to honor the real color of our river, which is naturally a dark green. Unless you come visit us on or around March 17th every year, then somebody started this tradition in the 1960s. We dropped an environmentally friendly dye into it, and we dyed this branch of the river, the main branch of the river, a bright neon green to celebrate St. Patrick's Day and the large Irish population here. And anybody who's as old as I am and remembers the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, that is the building where Ferris Bueller's dad worked in that movie. Yeah. So off to the left-hand side, look at this building, kind of on its own. It's got a red swirly sculpture at the base here. This is River Point. It's from 2017. Pickard Chilton are the architects. Great example of contemporary architecture. It's got an arch at the base, and then kind of the reverse of the arch up on its roof line there. Those arches are not just decorative, they're actually holding that building up on this very odd-shaped site that it's built on. It's also built over active rail lines underneath it there. I'll talk more about that when we get to the south branch of the river. Up ahead on the left-hand side, you'll see a peach, kind of salmon-colored building. That's the oldest building you'll see on the tour tonight. It's from 1898. It's called Fulton House. The architect is Frank Abbott. The original purpose for that building was it was a giant freezer. One of the big industries in Chicago kind of put us on the map was the meat packing industry. And so that's where we would house big slabs of pork and beef frozen in that building before they got shipped out to grocery stores and butcher shops. When Harry Weiss, the architect, wanted to redevelop that building and make it into something new, the first thing he had to do was thaw out the building. So he had to thaw away 500 semi-truckloads full of horsehair and cork, which were the two materials that were insulating the building to keep all that meat frozen. He created apartments on top and a little office space down below. He really had faith that the river was going to be a place that people would want to be this close to, which was saying a lot in the late 1970s, early 80s. The next structures, these lower structures with the lots of gray and triangles along the roof line here, these are private homes. They're called river cottages. They're from 1988. and Harry Weiss and Associates developed those as well. Harry Weiss was a sailor, so he loved to incorporate the shape of a triangle into his designs, and that's the shape of a sail on a sailboat. I lived in Washington, D.C. for about 14 years, and I used the train system there called the Metro. Harry Weiss designed that as well.
That you lived there.
Kind of a Renaissance man. So here we're on the north branch of the river. This used to be all industrial buildings up here, but it's really it's experienced a whole different kind of life up here now. The building off to the right-hand side with the blue panel and all these lovely kayaks in front today. This is the East Bank Club. It's a premier membership fitness facility, and when it was completed in 1979, the owners just could not fathom that somebody would want to be running on a treadmill overlooking the Chicago River, because it was not looking the way it does today. And so a lot of these windows weren't in the original design. They added them later when the river really started to shape up. You might recognize some of the names who used to be members of that club. Former President Barack Obama used to run on a treadmill in there, and everybody's favorite book club hostess and media mogul Oprah Winfrey used to work out at the East Bank Club. Now look over on the left-hand side, you can see what a difference a couple decades makes. These are all private homes, these red brick homes here. They're called Kinsey Park Townhomes. They were completed in 2002. Papa George Haynes is the architect. These people literally have the Chicago River right in their front yard. You'll notice there's a railing along the river's edge here. There's beautiful sort of flower boxes hanging off of it. Just behind it is a sidewalk, and it's not necessarily for the people who live in those homes, although I'm sure they use it all the time. That's a public river walk. In 1998, Chicago passed a city ordinance saying anybody who develops, whether it's private home or office on the river, has to leave 30 feet or about 8 meters for a public river walk. That particular piece of it has a gate that locks at night to give the people who live there a little break from the traffic, but it is a public river walk. So over on the right-hand side, you'll see a brick building. It's got black metal balconies hanging off of it. The building itself used to be industrial. It dates back to the early 1900s, and it was converted into condominiums in the mid-1990s. You can usually tell when a building is converted into condos when it's got metal balconies. It's not part of the original design. Now, having a balcony off your condominium or apartment is a pretty nice amenity. Not everybody has one of those, but it's not quite enough outdoor space for people. And so when this part of the river really started to convert to a lot of residential buildings, the city planners and neighbors who lived up here really started kind of organizing themselves to get a public park established in this area of the city. I'm very proud to say my organization, Trust for Public Land, helped this neighborhood do that. And so off on the right-hand side of the boat, you have to look through this dense canopy of trees, but there is a park there. We were able to negotiate with the landowner to keep development from happening on this piece of land, and then we were able to transfer it over to the Chicago Park District, and now it's a public park for everybody to enjoy. It's got one of the best tree canopies of any park. I bet on a hot day it's about 15 degrees cooler in there. There's a dedicated dog space, because a lot of dogs in Chicago. There's a playground, and there's just really nice little hills. Oh, all those people are enjoying it tonight. It's called Aaron Montgomery Ward Park. Montgomery Ward came to Chicago to work for Marshall Field, one of our big department stores. He was tasked with going to the outskirts of the city and out into the rural areas to convince people to shop at Marshall Field and all the great products they had there. He noticed when he got out, especially to the rural areas, that sometimes people only had like one general store where they could shop. That store got to set the prices. That store got to set policies about who could even shop there. And Montgomery Ward wanted to do something about that. He kind of wanted to equalize the market. So he came up with the idea for the very first mail order catalog. Now, if you're too young to know what a mail order catalog is, congratulations. Picture your favorite online shopping site, and then picture yourself printing it out, every single page of that online site. That's basically what a mail order catalog is. So he came up with this idea of shopping from afar. Now, of course, back then you couldn't get your stuff in a couple of days, or even in a couple hours, right? But it kind of revolutionized the way people shop. He also was really dedicated to a promise made on the very earliest plat maps for Chicago. There was a promise always written on those maps that said, keep the lakefront forever open, free, and clear. And he started noticing that people, especially his peers in the business world, starting to buy up land and build on our lakefront, especially in the area that we now call Grant Park, which is kind of where a part of it is where the Bean is, Millennium Park's within Grant Park. He had a building over there and he could see people doing this. He took all those people to court, used his own money to stop any development from happening on the lakefront. And so he has a nickname. We call him the watchdog of the lakefront. And ever since then, nobody has been developed anything privately on the lakefront, thanks to Montgomery Ward and a lot of other people, but he really kind of set the bar for that. He owned a lot of buildings here on the north branch of the river too for his growing mail order catalog business. He started with a one-page catalog in about 1872, and within just less than 10 years he had a 1,000-page catalog, so he really kind of tapped into something new. So he had to buy several buildings to house not only all the products that he was going to mail out to people, but all of the staff that were working for him, and several of them are here on the river. Oh, there's a barge over to the left-hand side of the boat. That's kind of fun. Wave to the guy on the barge.
Hi, barge guy.
Oh, wow.
Man.
So coming up on the right-hand side, this cream-colored building, it has metal balconies hanging off of it. This was one of Montgomery Ward's buildings, and this is good. We can get really close to see the ornamentation on this building. See how it's flush with the facade of the building? That's very typical of buildings in the 20s and 30s during that Art Deco era. They often had geometric shapes, and anything that referenced any like Egyptian culture was really big during the Art Deco era. So pyramids, triangles, chevrons, and I love when they added the metal balconies. Remember, those were added much later. The building dates is from like 1930. I love that they chose a triangle pattern for those balconies as well, kind of honoring the past. So the building on the right-hand side, you're going to see a lot of tall buildings in Chicago, but this is a really horizontal building. It's made to look even more so by these bands of terracotta and brick in between the rows of windows. This is called 600 West. It's from 1908. The architects are Schmidt, Garden, and Martin. It's got a great covered portion of the Riverwalk underneath it here. This was basically the fulfillment center for Montgomery Ward and his catalog business. You think of companies like Amazon and Target, and I love this company called Chewy where you can buy anything for your cat or dog. Having these big, huge buildings that store all the products before they're mailed out to you. Well, this is where Montgomery Ward's products were. And now today, those big companies have robots or some sort of like little scooters that people can ride as they're traveling through these long, long buildings. But back in the early 1900s, they didn't have anything like that. They had human beings who were together, and they had to get up and down this building really quickly to get the products out. And to do that, they wore roller skates.
Human beings.
They just zipped all along this building. So they were probably in fantastic shape too. So here's where we're going to turn the boat around a little bit and go back the way we came. We're not going to talk about any
Where that whole
new
bean thing
buildings
came
for a
from,
while.
you know?
It's a good time to go maybe hit the second round at the bar, or don't forget to tip the bartender down there, or take a break and walk around, whatever you want to do. You're not going to miss anything new up here. Oh, except let me tell you about this building. It's going to be on the right-hand side of the boat now. You might have seen it. It's a kind of an active construction site right now. As early as late next summer, I think it's going to be done, at least most of it. This is going to be Bally's Chicago. It's going to be a casino, and also the taller building with the blue glass there. That's going to be the hotel portion. It's going to have about a 400-room hotel there. It's also going to have an auditorium on the inside for comedians and music acts and things like that. And because it's on the river, it's going to have at least 30 feet wide of a river walk. So you probably won't catch me playing craps or blackjack or what do they do in casinos, but I'm definitely going to check out, see what they do with the river walk. So let me tell you a little story about the Chicago River. Chicago was officially incorporated as a city in 1837, and back then only about 4,000 people were permanent residents here in Chicago. But if you remember at the beginning of the tour, I told you there's a quiz at the end, right?
Yeah.
By the end of the 1800s, it was the fastest growing city in the world. And when it first started as a city, only about 4,000 people were permanent residents. That number would grow and grow and grow by the end of the 1800s. People were coming here from all over. There were lots of jobs to be had, not only in construction, building the city, but like I said, the meatpacking industry. There were lots of factories that were manufacturing farm equipment, machinery, all sorts of things were happening in Chicago. We had that great location on that interconnected system of waterways. The railroads made everything more convenient by the middle of the 1800s. So Chicago was growing at a really, really fast clip. And with all of that growth came a lot of waste. I'm talking about construction waste. I'm talking about waste from the meatpacking industry. Like once they scraped all the meat off of the animals, they just threw the carcasses right in the river. I'm talking about waste from people's homes. You know what I'm talking about. You know how I said the natural color of the river is this dark green? Back by the end of the 1800s, the natural color of the river was a dark brown. You know what I'm talking about. It was gross. All of this stuff was being thrown into the river. We were using the river as our city dump. We were using it as became an open sewer. It was a real mess. And also, the way that the land is naturally formed here in Illinois, in this particular part of Illinois, the Chicago River flows east and it empties into Lake Michigan, which was, back then and still is, the source of all of our drinking water. So all of that waste was going into the Chicago River. The Chicago River was flowing out into the source of our drinking water. That's pretty gross. It was not only gross, it was becoming a really serious public health crisis pretty quickly. Beginning in the 1850s, people started dying of horrible deaths from waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid at really alarming rates. So the city knew it had to do something about this quickly because it didn't look like the population was going to stop growing anytime soon. So they entertained a couple different ideas to solve this problem. All of them had only like short-term effects. They didn't really last that long. It wasn't until this brilliant man from Boston, Massachusetts, has a cool name, Ellis Sylvester Chesbrough, he suggested to the city that they need to use the existing canal system, if they could, to divert the Chicago River and make all of the waste go away from the most developed part of the city and away from the drinking water source before it was too late. He didn't quite live to see the full project done, so he handed it off to another man whose last name was Guthrie. And they came up with this idea to dig a really, really deep canal, deeper than any other canal that had been dug before. And it was also going to be very, very long. I'm talking like 28 miles, about 45 kilometers long. It was going to be lower than the riverbed of the Chicago River. It was going to be lower than the surface of Lake Michigan. And this new canal was going to connect those two bodies of water. So as you're building this canal, you're going to build temporary walls to hold back all that water. You don't want all that water rushing into the canal before it's done. And then when it's done, you're going to break down the temporary walls, and water is just going to seek out its lowest source. So it's going to pull with such a force from the lake and the river and run into this new canal that it's going to force the Chicago River to run westward instead of eastward. It's going to reverse the flow of the Chicago River. And then all of that waste is going to go downstream and become somebody else's problem. Well, the city's like,
It's like one
let's
of
do
them's
it.
a Weber.
It took 8
It's
years.
like you started
It took
with an
thousands
open
of
one.
laborers to build this thing. Most of them are immigrants and African Americans.
Yeah, smoke
and it got a lot of
out
press. You know, it was going to be this big engineering project. And so most people were watching kind of in awe. Look what Chicago's doing. Let's see if this works. And everybody seemed to be very interested and curious about it. But people downstream from Chicago were not that excited about it. They were like, let's see if we can get this stopped before it's completed because we don't want that wall of waste coming our way. And it was really the city of St. Louis, particularly the whole state of Missouri, got organized and filed a lawsuit to get the project stopped up here in Chicago. They were hoping to scare them into just stopping the whole thing before any waste moved. Well, all that did was make the people digging the canal up here work faster. They were like, let's just get it done. I think the judge is going to be on our side. It's all going to be great. Let's just get it done and we'll show the world what we're doing. So they did that. And in the early days of January in 1900, they finally finished building that giant canal. They had hauled away more earth to build this thing than then had been hauled away when they were digging the Panama Canal. It was a giant project. And so they were ready to release the water, see what it does, to see if what Mr. Chesbro and Mr. Guthrie said would happen. And it did. The Chicago River started flowing to the west. It started flowing backwards, and all of Chicago's waste went away. And within just a couple of, not even a year, I think, the deaths of people dying from cholera and typhoid, that the death rate went down by 50%. So it really started to work right away. Now, people downstream from Chicago were not that happy about us. That lawsuit that the state of Missouri filed went all the way to the Supreme Court, but the judge sided on the side of Chicago. He said, well, the project's already done. It seems to be working. The waste is traveling such a far distance that it's kind of getting naturally filtered out before it hits any other big urban area. And he goes, by the way, you can't tell when the waste comes, if it's Chicago's waste, if it's St. Louis's waste, if it's some other city's waste. So the project stands. And ever since that day, the Chicago River has flown backwards. Now, we got a lot smarter about it. In the 1920s, we started building water filtration plants. Now we're applying a lot of science to the cleaning of our water. Major legislation was passed in 1974, the Clean Water Act, making it the law of the land that cities have to provide clean water for their inhabitants and anybody downstream from them. I also give a lot of credit to the Friends of the Chicago River. They're a local nonprofit that their sole purpose is to keep the Chicago watershed clean for people, plants, and wildlife. And they have done a lot to not only make sure new policies are created, but also that old policies are enforced. So we owe them a debt of gratitude too. And these days, the Chicago River is the cleanest it's been in well over 100 years. They're starting to see, like I said before, fish come back. In the early 1970s, we were down to about 5 species of fish. Now we have about 30 or 40 different species of fish. People are seeing turtles and otters and muskrats come back to the river. It's really doing quite well.
Right there?
And this September, on September 20th, they're going to host the second annual Chicago River Swim. And so swimmers actually sign up if they qualify to do a swim course in the Chicago River. So that's a testament to its cleanliness.
Brad, there you are, bud.
So we just went under a bridge that's kind of stuck in its upright position. All of our bridges that we're going under can do what this one's doing. Now you kind of have to turn around to see the one I'm talking about. Sorry about that. All of these bridges are called trunnion bascule bridges, and they operate like a seesaw. They all have a big counterweight. You can actually see the weight on that one because it's exposed. Most of the weights are hidden behind bridge houses on the banks of the river. But they can move up and down like that in case boats who are taller than the one we're on right now need to travel underneath them. And there's an organized system of raising the bridges every spring and fall. It's called Bridge Lift Days. There's a schedule maintained by the city of Chicago. And it's great in the spring because the sailboats kind of parade out to Lake Michigan. And then it's sad when they have to parade back in when it's starting to get cold. But it's really fun to watch all the bridges open one by one and let the boats go through. So we're crossing over the main branch and going down to the south branch of the river. There's a nice photo op off the left-hand side of the boat there.
No easy.
Brandon, you got the photo?
I got the whole
Oh,
video.
and over here on the right-hand side, you can see the elevated train going across the river. That's so Chicago.
You need to send that to Joel because he said that he missed the
Well, I will.
So look at this building off the right-hand
I think
side of
I'm
the boat.
live
It's kind of
streaming, but I'm
beyond
not
all this
sure.
construction that's going on.
I don't
the Lake Street
understand the
Bridge here.
technology.
Look at the base of this building. It's got a really dramatic angle to it. Oh, the L is about to pull off what I'm talking about. Right where the L is going by, see that gray concrete block, the rectangle? That is the core of this building. It's made of the highest rated strength of concrete built on any building in that time. This building was completed in 2017. And that sharp angle next to the concrete core there has steel rollers on it that are 40% stronger than any steel used on any building up until that time. This building is called 150 North Riverside. It was completed in 2017 by Getch Partners. It's an office building, and it's built on a piece of land that nobody wanted to mess with because there were buildings around it already. There were active railroad tracks underneath it, and it was just a little postage stamp size piece of land. But Getch Partners figured out to build a really skinny base and then have it flare out so they could maximize the number of offices in that building.
That's where Brad said he
Something
presented
smells
there.
good. Come on.
All of our tall buildings sway a little bit. They sway. A healthy building can even sway a couple feet on each side. Architects and engineers have to come up with ways to mitigate that sway, so hopefully people don't feel it as much. Coming up on the left-hand side, you'll see another creation by Getch Partners. They're not afraid of a challenge here. They had another challenging size site here. This is the Bank of America Tower. It's from 2020. They needed to get as close to the river as possible. They needed to make their building skinnier at one end than the other to match the piece of land that was on. And they needed to provide a river walk because they're on the river. They chose to group these big steel solar columns in groups of 3. They kind of look like big chicken feet to maximize people's views as they walk along the public river walk there, which was really nice of them. And they also had to complete a building in the year 2020, yet another challenge for them. So coming up on the left-hand side, you're going to see a building that takes up your entire field of vision here. And the sun is hitting it in a beautiful way. This is the Civic Opera House. It's from 1929. Gray Medicine Probes and White are the architects. Now that we're passing by it, everybody look directly up, and you'll see that the building is in the shape of a big high-back chair or throne, very typical of buildings in the 20s and 30s. This big blank wall we're looking at is the back of the stage of the Opera House, and most of the windows that you see in this building are from other offices that rents out space to other businesses. This had the very bad luck of opening about 6 days after the stock market crashed in 1921. So you can imagine not many people are spending money to go to the opera for a while. It's rebounded quite nicely though. It's home to Lyric Opera of Chicago. One of the most successful opera companies in the country. And the Opera House itself is pretty mammoth, but it's still about 10 seats smaller than the biggest one in the country, which is up in our friend, the beautiful city of New York. So this part, we're on the south branch of the river here. This little section that we're going by, I always call it the Modernist Canyon. So, you know, someday I'll be cool enough to be like a real river guide, like out west or something. But for now, I'm stuck on the Chicago River. So we have all of our mountains here on the right-hand side. These are 4 buildings we call the Gateway buildings, Gateway 1, 2, 3, and 4. What's cool is they're all kind of in chronological order, so you can see them move from the modernist style of architecture into the postmodern style. They're all built between 1965 and 1983, and all done by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. So Gateway 1 and 2, we're now coming up on 2. They look like your typical modernist buildings. And a flat roof, one geometric shape all the way around, identical rows of windows all the way around, and no external ornamentation. The modernists kind of preferred that dark steel and dark glass in their early buildings, you know, from the 1940s up through the 60s. We really owe the modernists a debt of gratitude because they helped a lot of our cities get back to work pretty quickly post-World War II. They were using the latest technology in their buildings, so they were nice and comfortable inside. They also had a very similar, simple footprint, so they could be constructed pretty easily, and people could get back to work and help the economies of their cities after those long war years. Now we're passing by Gateway 3, this lighter colored building. They got a little wild and lightened up their color choice on the exterior of the building. This is called Fifth Third Bank Center as well, but we also call it Gateway 3. And then the last one coming up ahead on the right, it kind of moves into the 1980s. They put a curve in the facade, very big departure for the modernists because they like to be regular all the way around. And they went with the green colored glass, much like Ferris Bueller's Dad's building back there at the confluence of the river for Gateway 4. Hey guys, up on the bridge. So Gateway 4 here, look at the base of Gateway 4 as we're coming up. It's got a little cube that pops out. It's the atrium of the building. And look for the little green circle in the window. It says Climate Action Museum. That's a free museum you can visit. It's usually open 9 a.m. Oh, there's some people having a party in front of it. 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. most days. Hi guys, we're talking about you. It's a great museum that helps you understand how architects and engineers are choosing building materials that are a little kinder to the environment. You know, about 40% of the carbon produced in Chicago comes from our buildings. And so it would make sense that we would focus on those buildings if we want to reduce our impact on the blue. So the building on the other side of this bridge, this sandy-colored mammoth building, it is called the Old Post Office. It's from 1921. Graham Anderson, Probst, and White are the architects. I told you about Montgomery Ward, his really successful catalog company. Well, other companies kind of copied his business model. Spiegel and Sears and Roebuck all came out of Chicago. Remember Spiegel?
Sears.
So we needed a big post office for all that mail going in and out, and of course we had a big population too. This was a post office until about 1995, and then it kind of became obsolete because it had the machines inside of it couldn't keep up with the quickness of mail sorting that they needed at that time. So the city abandoned it and built another post office a little further down the road. And now it's home to a lot of big companies in there that have this beautiful modern office space in there, all the cool amenities that you'd want in an office post-pandemic.
Indoor plumbing, stuff like that.
There's a public food hall in there, and there's a bocce court inside of that building. My favorite part of that building that was on the rooftop, there's a 3-acre park on the roof. It's got a pickleball court, it's got a running track, it's got all sort of native plants up there. Can't see it from here, so you'll just have to take my word for it. It's not a public park, sadly, but if you know anybody who works in that building or you get a tour of that building, ask them if you can see the roof. It's really cool. A lot of our old buildings can be retrofitted to be a little bit greener, and putting a green roof on your building is one way to do it. It helps bring down the temperature naturally of the building. Also provides nice resting place for migrating birds, and migrating birds are big here in Chicago. So coming up on the left-hand side of the boat, you'll see another version of a river walk. This one doesn't connect to the one on the main branch, but it's its own version here on the south branch here. It's more of a boardwalk here along the river. The South Branch is quickly becoming a big residential center. Lots of apartment buildings are going up all around on the South Branch here. And the developers have promised to leave about a third of the land open for a public park there. And so this river boardwalk is one part of it. And there's a lot of open green space there too that will remain undeveloped. Nice amenity for the people living in the apartments and also anybody visiting downtown Chicago.
Oh, really?
As we get close to this building that comes right up to the river's edge here, it says the Reed Itself Bank on it. Look at they're putting like a stair step pattern there, those stones that are piled up. Those stones were found when they were excavating this site. They were actually part of the old train station that used to sit on that land until about 1971. So I like that they've rearranged them into like a natural sort of little amphitheater there, so the old purpose of the site can be incorporated into the new purpose. Nice. So on the left-hand side, this concrete building has a lot of windows that look like very perfectly groomed eyebrows to me. This is River City. It's from 1986. Bertrand Goldberg is the architect. Bertrand Goldberg was very worried about people abandoning cities for the suburbs. He knew cities would always survive because they had office space and restaurants and theater and things like that. But he was kind of perplexed that people were choosing to live out in the suburbs instead of city life. And so we go by two of his developments on the river. This one's from 1986. We'll go by an even earlier one on the main branch there. So these are all apartments up on top, and then there's retail space down below. And then underneath the building, there's all sorts of places to park boats. He also came up with a way of aerating the water underneath the building so that people could keep their boats in there all year round to keep the river from freezing too much, so they wouldn't have to pay for extra storage space. So we're coming to a point where we're going to turn the boat around once again. Everybody look over to the right-hand side of the boat. Yeah, there's not much there. Everybody always does what I say then. That's drunk with power. Oh my God. There's not much over there, but that's an important portion. That's an important spot in the city's history, because that's where we believe the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 started. We don't know how it started. It's still a mystery. You'll hear some people tell you a story about a hardworking, lovely Irish woman and her cow You won't hear me tell that story because I know it's not true. Even the journalist who wrote about it admitted it was true, and she was cleared of any wrongdoing, and her cow was too, in the early days after the fire. But that rumor persisted for years and years and years and really ruined her life. By the way, she lived in that house with a husband and 5 kids. They don't get blamed for it. Don't get me started. Okay, so we don't know how the fire started, but we know the devastating effects of it. It was kind of the big one that we were waiting for. It was October of 1871, and we had just had not enough rain that year. It hadn't really rained enough since July of that year, so we had a drought going on. Our favorite building material at the time was wood. We had wood-framed houses, office buildings. We had wooden streets. We had some wooden bridges. Wood was everywhere. We had a really big population, and everybody kind of lived really kind of on top of each other. So our fire department was just waiting for the big one to happen. They had been fighting a lot of fires that week, but this was the one that beat them all. So it started over here, now off to the left-hand side of the boat. It was so ferocious it jumped the river a couple different places. It was fed by some winds that were blowing it right into the most developed part of the city, which was just bad luck. And it spawned fire tornadoes. Like it whipped up the wind. It looked like fire tornadoes were running around. It made trees explode from the intense heat of it. And it basically burned everything in its path. It ended up burning about 14,000 structures, about 3.5 square miles. If you know Chicago, it burnt all the way up to basically where the Lincoln Park Zoo is today. And it rendered about a third of our population homeless. About 100,000 people had no place to live once the fire was put out. And it wasn't put out for a good 3 days. It was burning for many, many, many hours. It didn't affect industries that were down in the south part of town, and it didn't affect our railroads, which was lucky. That helped us get back to work pretty quickly. It helped keep our economy buzzing a little bit while we tried to rebuild. It also happened at a kind of lucky time in history. We were moving away from using mostly wood in our buildings. We were starting to lean on stone and brick, and the most important material, steel. We were starting to construct steel internal frames to our building and hang walls onto that frame. And so the world was changing, and Chicago was trying to keep up. It was amazing. Within just 10 years of that fire, the first skyscraper emerged on the city's skyline, and just 22 years later, Chicago was able to host the world when it held the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, and millions of people came to Chicago to see how we had rebuilt after the fire. After the fire, our buildings were safer, they were more profitable, and they were much, much taller. And speaking of tall, look directly in front of the boat, that black rectangle, tall building with the two white antennas on top. That's the tallest building on our skyline still today. That is the Willis Tower. It's from 74, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. The lead architect was Bruce Graham, and the lead structural engineer was a man named Fazler Khan. It was the tallest office building in the world for several years. These days, though, it probably wouldn't even make a top 30 tallest buildings in the world. There's much, much taller buildings out there, but it's still our superstar here in Chicago. Now, we have kind of a accent here in the Midwest, some of us do, and you might hear Chicagoans when they tell you this building's name, that it sounds a little different than the one I just told you. Chicagoans pronounce that building Sears. It was the Sears Tower when it was first completed, but it's been called the Willis Tower since about 2018. So sometimes I call it the Willis/Sears Tower. It looks like one rectangular tube, but it's actually 9 all bundled together. They call it bundled tube technology. 2 of those tubes, the rectangular tubes, go up to the 50th floor. 2 go up to the 66th. 3 go up to the 90th floor, and 2 go the full 110 stories of that building. Quickly look over to the right-hand side. See the sandy-colored building? It's got a pyramid top and a statue on top of the pyramid. That's the Chicago Board of Trade. That's one of my favorites, so I always try to get it in. That's from 1930, Halliburton Root. If you like Art Deco era buildings, you got to go visit that one. It's one of the most beautiful examples of Art Deco ornamentation. Okay, back to the Willis/Sears Tower. Look to the building just to the front of it. It's kind of got a pink color to it, and it's got a crown all the way at the top. Imagine if you had to design the building that was going to be like right next door to the Willis. You would be like, how do I make my building stick out against that icon? Well, I think they accomplished it here. Instead of using rectangles, they chose an octagon-shaped building. It's on top of a triangular base. They put that big crown on top of it that lights up at night. They used pink granite instead of dark steel and glass. And all of the windows on that building are different shapes and sizes. They're not regular all the way around like the modernist Willis Tower is. I think when they're standing side by side like that, they kind of look like a couple who's going to the prom. The Willis Tower is in the black tuxedo, and the building next to it, which is called 311 South Wacker, kind of looks like the prom queen, right? She's got the crown right. That building's called 311 South Wacker. It's from 1990, and the architects are KPF. That big crown at the top does light up. You can see it from lots of different points all over the city once the sun goes down, except if you visit us during bird migration season, so in the spring and the fall. They're kind enough to dim that bright crown between the hours of 11 p.m. and about 6 a.m. the next day. We live on the Mississippi Flyway. It's basically like a big highway for migrating birds. Billions of birds come through here in the spring and the fall. And so there's a program that a lot of our buildings are a part of called Lights Out Chicago. And any exterior sort of non-essential lighting on buildings, they turn it down during migration season so it doesn't blind those birds, so that they can get safely to their destinations. On the right hand side, you'll see a modernist building right up to the edge of the river here. It's got a big concrete slab on it. Look at the mural that's painted on the concrete slab. It's a mural of the Chicago River. And if you look up, you'll see that orange rectangle kind of popping out. That's us. That's the "You Are Here" symbol. We're traveling along that of Chicago. When this building was completed in 1971, there was nothing on this concrete slab. They never thought anybody would be looking at this side of their building because it's the back of the building. But in 2014, they put this on there because they saw these people floating by on all these architecture cruises.
That's so cute. You are here.
Jumper.
So let's look over on the left-hand side of the boat. All of these buildings are built over active rail lines. If you look underneath the buildings, you can see some of the trains parked in there. Sometimes they're idling in there. We had pretty much built everything we could in our downtown area, so we started to look west. And when people wanted to develop the land that was close to the river, they were looking around and said, well, who do we go to build over the railroad tracks? We can figure out how to build platforms and get down to bedrock and build buildings, but who do we buy the land from? Who has the rights to this land? And it turned out it was the rail companies. They not only owned the land that their rail lines were in, they owned all of the air above it. So they had rights to the air, or air rights. And so they sold those rights to the people developing buildings, and these buildings appeared. So they built platforms over the tracks, and sometimes they built in between the tracks, and they figured out how to get down to dig their foundations of these buildings. Of course, probably put in a lot of soundproofing too. You don't want to have to hear the trains go by all the time. And the train traffic never stopped the whole time. Trains were very important to the development of Chicago, and they're very important to the way people move around it today. We have a giant train station called Union Station that takes people all over the country on Amtrak, but we also have tons of commuter trains that are going south, west, and north at all hours of the day too. So there's no getting around or trying to stop the train traffic just because you want to build a building. One building had a little bit of a tricky time getting down to dig their foundation. It's this building. It's up ahead, pretty far ahead on the left-hand side of the boat. Look for a brick building. It's got a clock face in it, and underneath the clock it says Intelsat. You'll see it as soon as we clear this bridge. Now look to the building just to the right of the brick building. It's a gray building, and it's got a metal structure on the roof there. That's the Boeing building. It's from 1990. Perkins and Will are the architects. They were having trouble with that southwest corner of their building, the side that's kind of right up next to the brick building there. They couldn't get down far enough to dig the foundation, so they decided to build that metal structure on top and hang that corner of the building from that metal structure. So it's hanging off of it, it's transferring its weight to the other corners of the building to keep it steady. Now they could have enclosed that metal structure and we would have not really known about it, but they thought that it looked a lot like the bridges that were crossing the river. So they kind of wanted to give an homage to the river. They knew the river was really important. And they probably wanted people like me to tell you about it because it's kind of cool. So the building we're floating by on the left, this sandy colored building, oh, the Chicago water taxi's parked right in front of it. This looks like, I've been talking about buildings that look like a high back chair or throne. This looks like a high back sofa to me. This is a 2 North Riverside Plaza. It's from 1929. Halliburton Root are the architects. Look at the trees popping up here just above the river. There's a beautiful open air plaza there. Now this was 1929. Not many people were embracing the outdoor space near the river, because remember I told you the river was not pleasant for a long time. But they must have known that it would change. So now it's a beautiful open plaza that people take their lunch. They have meetings out there. I've seen it being set up for weddings. So I don't know. They could see into the future there at 2 North Riverside Plaza. That building just achieved landmark status too, so it's getting a lot of fun things done to the interior and exterior of that building. We're coming back up on our friend 150 North Riverside. Now he's on the left-hand side. Look at the base of that building. It looks like a martini glass. Some people say it looks like a ballet dancer standing on her point shoes. I don't know, martini glass sounds better to me. That's 150 North Riverside, and I told you our tall buildings can sway a little bit. I have friends who work in the Willis. They sometimes feel the sway in the Willis a little bit. All buildings sway a little bit. It's perfectly healthy, but you don't want them swaying so much that people are feeling sick all day long. So this building employs something called a liquid-tuned damper. These are basically big tanks of water, enclosed tanks of water. They're placed at the highest floors of the building, usually in the corners of the building. And when the building sways to the left, the water in the tank kind of pulls it back to the right. They also put an arm, a mechanical arm inside of the tanks that they can manipulate the rate that the water is moving. So they can calculate the rate that the building's moving, and then they can make the water move at a different rate, and that makes it come back to neutral pretty quickly, hopefully before anybody is the wiser.
That was a hard fucking pass. Oh no.
Some people can feel it no matter what, and I've been told that if you put like a glass of wine or a water down, you can sometimes see the water sloshing. I know. If it's not for you, then yeah, find another office building. So we're going to come back up to the main branch of the river. This time we're going to turn right. The buildings directly in front of the boat, they're about to be on the left. They're perched on a little piece of land called Wolf's Point. We think that's where the earliest permanent residents of Chicago lived. Now it's home to a couple residential towers, and the building right in the middle is the beautiful Salesforce Tower. It's from 2023. Sometimes they let docents like me and my friends go in and tour that building. So I was sitting on one of the higher floors of that building looking at all the boats going by the other day. It was kind of fun. Off to the right-hand side, you'll see this patch of grass here. This is actually the westernmost room of the Riverwalk. This room is called the Confluence. It's kind of like Chicago's side yard over here. They always have these Adirondack chairs. They're always set up here so people can sit and enjoy beautiful views of the skyline and the river. I wonder if the earliest inhabitants of Chicago could time travel and come back, they would be just amazed that people would want to sit that close to the river. So over on the left, this mammoth sort of sandy colored building on the left, it's got kind of a stubby tower in the middle, and lots of limestone, so the lighter building material you can see creates these vertical stripes on the facade of the building. That's very typical of buildings in the 20s and 30s. They kind of wanted to emphasize their height, and so any tricks of the eye they could employ, they would. They often have windows that are taller than they are wide too. That also helps emphasize the verticality. As we get close to it, you'll see diamond sort of bronze ornamentation flush with the facade of the building. Also very typical of buildings in the 20s and 30s. This is called the Mart. It's from 1930. Graham Anderson, Probst, and White are the architects. It's now home to a bunch of designer showrooms. So if you're shopping for tile or furniture or sort of bathroom or kitchen fixtures for your apartment or your home, it's a good place to go kind of see them all staged for you in the designer showrooms. It's got a great open air plaza. There's some people enjoying it on this perfect night tonight too. And when the sun goes down between Thursdays and Sundays, most months of the year, they project a slideshow onto this building because it looks like a nice use of like a movie screen up there. And it's a slideshow of artworks, and it's called Art on the Mart. If you go to artonthemart.com, you can see more information about the artists they're featuring this year. It changes every year. This is a good time of night to see if we can see a building up here. Way ahead on the right. Yes, way ahead on the right. See the tall, skinny green building with the gold roof, the gold tower on top there? That is now Pendry, Chicago. It used to be called the Carbide and Carbon Building. It's from 1929. Burnham Brothers are the architects. It's made with green terracotta all on the base, and that's real 24 karat gold at the top of that building. It's only 1/5000th of an inch thick, but it is real 24 karat gold. One of the inspirations for the design of that building was a bottle of champagne. If you think about it, champagne bottles are always dark green, and they've got the gold foil top. Kind of a cheeky reference for a building built in the midst of Prohibition. I kind of like it. So coming up ahead on the left, on the other side of the bridge there, see that glass office building? That's called 300 LaSalle. It does something really nice for the Chicago River. It takes in the Chicago River water and uses it in the cooling system for the building, and then before it returns it back to the river, it filters it, so it leaves the water cleaner than it found it. So as we clear this bridge, look ahead on the left. You'll see, it will look like just one tower, but pretty soon you'll see its twin. This building that kind of looks like a corn cob up ahead, and it's got cars parked on the lower floors of it. This is one of the two towers that make up Marina City. Marina City used to be a complex of buildings. It was the two towers and then a bunch of buildings at the base. Developed between 1962 and 1967. This is another creation of Bertrand Goldberg, the architect who was worried about people abandoning cities for the suburbs. He created these really cool apartment dwellings to kind of create cities within the city and make city living kind of sexy again. He put everything he could think of to attract tenants. So a place to park your car. Well, you can't park your car. Only professional valets are allowed on the floors there, which is good because I think a lot of cars would end up in the river. Look, they're right up to the edge there. And the original complex of buildings had a bowling alley, a movie theater, lots of retail options at their base. But today it's just the two apartment towers. Every single apartment is in the shape of a piece of pie, so it's pointy at the center, and then each one has a balcony like that too. He swears that corn cobs were not his inspiration. It was really trees he was thinking about. So the center of the building is meant to be the trunk of the tree, and then the apartments are the branches, and balconies are the leaves. He's considered a modernist architect because his buildings are one geometric shape all the way around, but he just wanted to get away from the right angles that you usually see with modernist buildings, like the one we're passing now on the left, AMA Plaza, this rectangle, steel and glass, dark steel and glass building. This is from 1971. It's from the office of Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe was a German architect. He came over from Germany in the late 1930s. He was actually a professor of architecture here in Chicago, and Bertrand Goldberg was his student. So you can see the student had a little different vision than his professor there. But Mies van der Rohe is sort of considered the godfather of the modernist movement here, definitely in the United States. You can find a lot of his buildings in Canada as well. So as we clear this bridge, we're going to get our first view on the left-hand side of Trump International Hotel and Tower. It's from 2009. Stephen Merrill are the architects. Lead architect is a man named Adrian Smith, and he's responsible for the tallest building currently in the world, the Burj Khalifa. This is a luxury hotel at its base, and luxury condominiums above it. It's got lots of retail space here at the river's edge here. 3 different levels of river walk, and it kind of extends all the way over to that clump of trees too, so there's lots of great views and ways to experience the river. It's the second tallest building currently in Chicago, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how it achieves that title when we're out at the lake and we're looking back at it. We're coming back to our friend Wrigley building. It's on the left-hand side now. This building with the clock tower. And that's my cue to tell you that the bathrooms will be closing pretty soon. So if you want to use the restrooms on the boat, this is like your last chance. Let's look beyond the Wrigley. It's a little further away from the river back there. It's got an American flag flying at the very top of it. The sun is hitting it in a beautiful way. That is Tribune Tower residence space. All right, a little Bon Jovi. It says Chicago Tribune in script at the base of it there. That building's from 1925. Howells and Hood are the architects. It was originally home to one of our major newspapers, the Chicago Tribune, but these days that's all private condominiums in that building. Look at the very top of it. It's got those L-shaped structures right under where the flag is flying. Those are called flying buttresses. And the top of that building kind of looks a lot like a cathedral because it's modeled after one that you would find in the city of Rouen, France. We're coming back up on Apple Michigan Avenue. Now it's off to the left-hand side here. And that building that says Fidelity at the base, I told you that the architects were Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. The lead architect who gets credit for that building is a man named Bruce Graham. He also created the Willis Tower. But lately, historians are finding out that it was actually two women who worked for Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill their whole life, but they never got to get their names associated with it because they weren't in head of an internal studio. But I'll tell you their names. Natalie DeBlois and Patricia Swan were responsible for that building. That's for the ladies. Something like only 25% of working licensed architects are women. So hopefully that number is going to be ticking up soon. So now look at the tops of all these buildings. Look for the one that has the peacock at the very top. It's got a spire coming right out of the top of the peacock there. And beautiful, like thin sort of pinstripes going down the building. That's NBC Tower. It's from 1989. Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill are the architects. It's another creation of Adrian Smith. It's meant to look a little like 30 Rockefeller Plaza in Manhattan, which is the world headquarters for NBC, or the National Broadcasting Corporation. This is our local version of it. It's got those L-shaped structures sitting out there about, I don't know, halfway up, a little further than halfway up the building. Again, those are flying buttresses. They are an architectural element. They help steady the building. But these ones are devoid of any external ornamentation on them. They're kind of stripped down versions of it. They kind of look like the shoulder pads that women were wearing in the 80s. Kind of make themselves look like head and shoulders. But it's a little nod to its neighbor across the plaza, that old Tribune Tower residences, the former Chicago Tribune building too. So it's and one of the ways our buildings kind of talk to each other and imitate each other a little bit. Now let's look over to the right-hand side of the boat. All of these buildings over here are in a neighborhood called Lakeshore East. These are all in Lakeshore East, which is a planned development here on the right-hand side of the boat. All of this is all built on land that is landfill. Some of it was land recovered from after the fire. Some of it is just man-made land built up in there. The Chicago Architecture Center has a building in there. And look at this building in the shape of a triangle. It says Swiss Hotel at the very top. That's by Harry Weiss, the architect. We talked about him earlier, and I said he really likes triangles because he was a sailor, and so he made an entire building in the shape of a triangle there. A couple buildings up ahead of us. Look for the building with lots of different shades of blue glass. It's got 3 towers all lashed together, and it kind of looks like it has a curvy profile, but that is an optical illusion, and I'll tell you a little bit how they achieve that a little bit later. This is St. Regis, Chicago. It's from 2020. The architects are Studio Gang. They're led by a woman named Jeannie Gang. She grew up about 70 miles northwest of Chicago, and she calls Chicago her home here. Studio Gang is big time though. They've got offices in San Francisco, New York, Paris, France, but their kind of headquarters is here in Chicago. St. Regis, Chicago is a luxury hotel, about the bottom third of the building, and everything above it are private condominiums. There's about 6 different shades of glass on that building. They help regulate the temperature, make it less dependent on internal climate control. Jeannie Gang is, like I said, only about 25% of licensed architects are women, so it's great that we have one of the world's most famous living right here in Chicago. Jeannie Gang and her Architects at Studio Gang like to take a lot of inspiration from nature for the layouts of their buildings, the shapes of their building, and that building is no exception. They were inspired by a shape called a frustum, and if you look at the cubed part of the building that pops out, there's metal work going around the glass. Those are frustums. It's basically like a pyramid, but instead of a pointy top, it has a flat top on it. And they chose to put them side by side, and the metal work there. And the entire building is made with the shape of a frustum. And I'll explain it more when we turn around and have another view of it.
My mind can't like grasp it.
So off to the left-hand side of the boat, that building that's kind of all by itself on the other side of the Lakeshore Drive Bridge. This is a building that kind of would make our friend Montgomery Ward a little sad because he didn't want anybody to develop private buildings on the lakefront. This one found a loophole in that ordinance, and they built this tower of condominiums there. It's called Lake Point Tower Condominiums, 1968, Shipwright and Heinrich. It's the only private residence on the east side of Lakeshore Drive out there. Afterwards, that loophole that they found was pretty firmly closed, and nobody has dared to build a private building on our lakefront since then. So we're getting pretty close to Lake Michigan out there. You might have felt the temperature drop a little bit. It's always cooler by the lake. Look over right on, as we get through the bridge here, off to the left, you'll see that it looks like it's just a meadow there on the edge of the river here. Someday that's going to be a park. I'm trying to keep faith alive because it's been promised for a while. Someday it's going to be called DuSable Park in honor of our first non-native settler, Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable. He used to live where the river used to meet the lake, further in, and now he's going to have a park in his name where the river does meet the lake out here. Look up ahead on the left, you'll see a Ferris wheel spinning. I think it's spinning around. It's sitting on top of Navy Pier. Navy Pier was completed in 1916. The architect is Charles Frost. Navy Pier used to be a place where naval aviators would train to go off to war. They would practice taking off and landing out there. Later it became an educational center, so people who completed their service in the military could come back and earn their college degree using the GI Bill. But for the last couple decades, Navy Pier has just been all about entertainment out there. There's all sorts of different carnival rides. There's our children's museum is out there. The Shakespeare Theater is out there. There's a cool new ride called Fly Over Chicago, where it makes you feel like you're sitting on a drone flying all over the streets of Chicago and out on the lake. Also feels a little bit like a roller coaster. Parts of it, like it shoots you down to the street level in a very dramatic way. But it's all done like as an IMAX movie, basically. That Ferris wheel is an homage to the very first Ferris wheel in the world. It's made its world debut here in Chicago at that 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. This one's pretty large, but the one back in 1893 was double that size and probably half as safe. So here the captain's going to turn around and give you probably the best view of the city skyline here. So I'll give you a break from my voice and let you enjoy the beautiful skyline of Chicago.
Someone's got pictures, right?
Oh, take all the pictures you want. Yep.
Someone's got it. Oh, wow. That's gorgeous. You got it, Neil? All the light. Right there?
Flowers in there?
That's the action cam on that. I didn't see that. This guy.
The lighting. You sure?
Oh, perfect. Okay, everybody needs to share their favorite pictures. I did not know right? Like everybody needs to
That's really fun. Thank you.
I'm so frustrated.
that in my